Continue approach to 9 left.
Continue approach, roger.
Now I'm going to try it down one more time.
Test the lights or not?
Yeah, check it.
Which seat back? Doug, it could be the light. Could you jiggle the light? It's got to come out a little and then snap in. I'll put them on. Up to 2,000. You want me to fly, Doug?
What frequency did you want us on?
28.6.
I'll talk to him.
All right, approach control Eastern 401. We're right over the airport here and climbing to 2,000 feet. In fact, we've just reached 2,000 feet. And we've got to get a green light on our nose gear.
Eastern 401, roger. Turn left heading 360. Maintain 2,000. Vectors to 9 left final.
Left to 360. I think it's above the red one.
Yeah, I can't get it from here.
I can't make it pull out either.
We got pressure?
Yes, sir. All systems.
Put the damn thing on autopilot.
All right.
See if you can put that light out. Well, you got to push the switch just a little bit further forward. Now turn it to the right a little bit. No, I don't think it's going to fit. Hey, get out there and see if that damn nose wheel's down.
Okay. You got a handkerchief or something so I can get a little better grip?
Ghost on a plane, Eastern Airlines Flight 401, crashed into the Florida Everglades in December 1972. The aircraft was Lockheed L-1011-1 Tristar, traveling from New York to Miami. The flight crew had become fixated on faulty indication in the cockpit. They had not realized that the autopilot was disconnected and they lost altitude and crashed. Luckily, 75 people survived, although 101 souls died, including Captain Robert Loft, Bob, and flight engineer Donald Repo, Don. Days later, the aircraft was retrieved and some parts salvaged, including a galley. Parts were used again on Eastern Airlines fleets. It was after this that the sighting started of both Bob and Don standing in the aisles, cockpit, and galley. The vice president of Eastern Airlines boarded his flight from New York and chatted with a pilot whom he assumed was the pilot of this flight. Later, he recognized that the pilot he'd been speaking to was in fact Bob. Another time, the captain was asked to check on a passenger in first class who was in pilot's uniform. The senior flight attendant said he was dazed and unresponsive when spoken to and was not on a passenger list. The captain recognized him as Bob. A flight attendant on a New York to Miami flight opened an overhead locker to find Bob's face peering out at her. On another flight, a flight attendant saw Don's face on the oven door. She called 2 crew in to witness what she had seen. He then said, "Watch out for fire in this plane." On the returning flight, the engine failed and had to be shut down before catching fire. On returning to the galley, another flight attendant saw an engineer fixing the oven. She asked the flight engineer later about the oven, and he said that he hadn't fixed it and it didn't need to be fixed. She later picked from some photos Don to be the engineer that she had seen. One day, the crew were in the cockpit discussing engineering when they discovered Don was sitting with them. He warned them of faulty electrical circuit, which was then found and replaced. Bob was seen doing his pre-flight checks of the aircraft and told the ground staff it was all okay, as he already completed the checks. The pilot was unnerved by what had happened and canceled the flight. Whilst in the cockpit one day preparing for the flight, the pilot heard loud knocks from under the floor beneath him. He opened the trapdoor to see Don looking at him, who then promptly disappeared. He wanted to look further and found a problem that could have caused a serious accident. The sightings were reported in a Flight Safety Foundation publication. Eastern Airlines CEO dismissed the claims, and crew were warned not to talk about the sightings. The crew had previously been encouraged to report every incident pertaining to the flight in the aircraft log. Books and many signs were recorded. Mysteriously, The logbook started to go missing from the aircraft. Eventually, all of the salvage parts were removed from the aircraft, and neither Bob nor Don were ever seen again. Truth or scare, we'll probably never know.